Welcome. Hi there. I'm Laura King and I am your student's counselor. I'm the 11th grade counselor. And I know many of your students already. I was their counselor last year and I will be their counselor next year. I will see them through graduation. I'd like to get started. I know some people are still trickling in, but I think we'll get started. I appreciate you being here at 7:30 on a cold night. So thanks for taking the time. I have been in all of your students' English classes over the last 3 days giving this similar presentation. I'm going to expand it a little bit to address what it's like to be on the parenting end of working with 11th graders going into senior year and then going into college, because this will be a year of change. And so I do want to touch on some of those items as well. But what I'm going to talk about when we talk credits, graduation requirements, and registering for classes for next year, this is all information that your students have already had. So when you go home, you could have a conversation with them about this. They've heard this from me, so there is a launching pad. You are getting the same information. So first of all, some just important dates. Right now, you're here, I'm here, we're talking about registration. And this week, like I said, I was in their English classes. Next week is going to be a really key period of time because that's when your student will be enrolling or registering for their senior classes. Kind of rolled around fast. I'm sure the students are excited, and I'm sure as parents it's interesting to think, wow, my student's going to be a senior next year. That does really happen quickly. But next week, so the week of the 17th, they're going to be registering for classes, and they're going to do that from home. In the past, what we've done is we've taken them into computer labs by class period and assisted them with the registering of classes. But now what we're doing is we're educating them on how to do the process, but then next week they will do that from home. If they get stuck, we do have 2 days where we'll be in the computer labs all day long, the counselors will, and we will be able to assist them in any way that they need. Some of the paperwork, I think I'm just going to go over what you have in front of you, and we'll be referring to it from time to time. That lighter yellow sheet with all the courses, that's the registration form, and that's what I encourage students to study and to take notes on when I was talking with them, so that when it's time to register for their classes next week, they're prepared. The half sheet, that is some college information to be aware of, things that are coming up. Real quick, I'm just going to tell you that there's a financial aid night coming up at the end of February. Even though you're currently not going to be applying for financial aid this year because your students won't be going off to college yet next fall, but the following fall, it's a really good use of your time to attend that, so you understand what paperwork you need to have in place for when it's time to apply for financial aid, specifically the FAFSA. That's a federal form that you will want to complete, and the closer that you do that to January 1, the better, because there is some scholarship money linked to that. And the financial aid expert will get into that more in February at this financial aid night. So it really is for junior parents. It's very appropriate that you be there. So that's your half sheet. Then there's some ACT information I'm going to go over in a little bit. And then you have your white packet. Those are 8 slides that I have sort of deemed the most important of this whole presentation, so that you don't have to take a lot of notes. It involves some websites and dates just to be aware of. So that's why you have all that paperwork. Hopefully you'll find it to be helpful. So what I'm going to launch into right now is just explaining to you what the transcript is all about. There's a lot of information on your student's transcript. They all have their transcript in their possession right now, and it reflects the most recent semester grades. So they may not want you to see it. They may want you to see it. I don't know, but they have it. Be aware that your student has been given their transcript. And that transcript has 5 semesters now of grades on it. All of 9th, all of 10th, and first semester of junior year. So a couple things that the transcript will tell you. First of all, every class that they take and pass, and a passing grade is a D- or higher, they are awarded 1 credit. So whether that grade is an A or a B or a C or a D, it is still valued at 1 credit. Now the grade point average will fluctuate depending on what they earn, but a credit is a credit here. So what I'm saying is we don't weight grades. Some high schools weight their grades. We don't do that. Every credit is truly just 1. Now, in addition to seeing a letter grade by a transcript, sometimes you'll see an I or an I+. We don't want that. That would not be a clean transcript. An I signifies that your student owes that teacher an assignment or a test or a presentation. There's something academically that they have yet to fulfill. And we want to get that cleaned up before it's time to send those transcripts next fall to your colleges, to your students' college. So it's really important that if you see an I, that you encourage your student to get that I rectified by meeting with their teacher. Right now, the way an I factors into a grade point average is the equivalent of an F. It's very harmful to a grade point average. Now an I+ is different. That is technically a passing grade, but it still does not help the grade point average because it doesn't reflect an actual letter grade. The I+ means there is an obligation such as a book or maybe a calculator or a flash drive, some piece of equipment that your student owes their teacher, and they're holding that grade until they get whatever it is that student checked out. So that's just, you know, they may have to pay for it if they've lost it, but it is something that, again, you want to get that cleaned up because next fall, an I or an I+ is very confusing to college admissions, and we don't want that. We don't want any sort of confusion on your student's college application. That's not a good thing. When we talk about credits, that's another thing that will be reflected on your student's transcript. And right now, to be on track with your credits, your junior should have between 30 and 35 credits. If they fall in that number, they are on track. If they're beneath that number, then they are technically considered not necessarily on track to graduate, but we have ways to get them caught up. So in those 2 ways, I'll just tell you right now, our Plato, our online credit recovery program, which is after school, and that meets twice a week. Students do seat time, they work at their own pace. Once they pass their classes, they can move on to another if they need to. And again, that's purely credit recovery. It's not credit acceleration where they can't take extra credits. It needs to be a class that they've actually failed and still need for their graduation requirements. Or the other way that students can make up credits if they need them is through summer school. And students can earn up to 2 classes during summer school. In the past, and probably what will happen again this year, summer school runs from the middle of June till the end of July. It's Monday through Thursday. And so within about 20 days or so, they are able to get up to 2 credits made through summer school. But as long as they're between 30 and 35, they're fine. What you'll see on their transcript is on the bottom part of their transcript, there will be a number, and it's on the transcript, the credits are specified as units. Units and credits, it means the same thing. Study halls. Sometimes I get students who get really nervous about taking a study hall. Even though they're pretty stressed, they have 7 classes on their schedule, they really can afford a study hall, but they're afraid if they take one, they will be credit deficient. They won't be on track. So just a scenario real quick. If a student takes a full schedule, all 4 years, 7 classes every semester, and passes all their classes, they never have a study hall, never have an open hour, they're going to graduate with 56 credits. That's a full 10 credits beyond what they actually need for high school graduation, for their diploma. At this school, you need 46 credits to graduate. So that's one scenario. The second scenario is they take a study hall every semester of their high school career. They pass all their other 6 classes. They're still 2 above our requirements to get a diploma. So the message in that is that it's okay to take a study hall. To balance 7 classes at any given time is a lot, especially with a lot of the outside activities that your students are involved in, sports, jobs. So we don't frown on study halls whatsoever. It allows for a little bit of balance in their lives. 46 credits that they do need to earn are specifically set up in different categories. So they need 4 years or 8 credits, same thing, of English. So your student will be taking English for sure next year, a full year. Same goes with social studies. They need 4 years or 8 credits of social studies. Math and science, to get a PARCC diploma, you need 3 years of math and 3 years of science. Now that's what's required. What's recommended, what I would recommend to them for college would be to get that 4th year of math and science as well. Then we have our Phi-Ed. Your student will need 1 credit of Phi-Ed. That can look like a lot of different things. A lot of students picked up PE 9 way back in freshman year. Some students have taken new moves. Some students have taken team sports. As long as they have 1 credit, they're fine there. 2 art credits, and then we have the 1 health credit. Now, the class of 2015 is a little different from the other classes in that many of your students had 9th grade health, so they already got 1 credit. And then we started this embedded program where they get a quarter credit for every year that they do health in 10th, 11th, and 12th. That is required that they do this embedded programming. So what they're actually going to have is 1.75 health credits by the time they graduate. That will in no way harm them. That 0.75 credit will just be part of their elective pool at the bottom, which is 14 credits. They need 14 elective credits as well. An elective credit could be language, music, computer tech classes. Basically anything that doesn't fall in these above categories would be considered elective credit. In addition to acquiring the 46 credits for their diploma, students also need to deal with the state tests. So in 9th grade, spring of 9th grade, they took the writing test. And then in the spring of last year, they did the reading, and this spring they'll be doing the math. So these are state tests. If they have passed all 3, that's wonderful. We don't have to worry about the state tests any further. If not, what we have been doing, what we did with our current senior class, and will most likely proceed with your students, is that if they take an ACT and the score is irrelevant, as long as they take the ACT, that will meet the requirement for these tests if they happen to fail one of these 3 tests, 1, 2, or 3. The ACT, participating in the ACT, will meet that requirement. The other option is if they don't take the ACT this spring, because maybe they're thinking, I want to go to a 2-year school, and I know 2-year schools don't require the ACT, then in the fall, we'll be giving them the ASVAB. That is a test that tests them on math, science, social studies, English, and it is something that, again, is a participatory test, so there's no baseline score that they need to achieve, but we will be giving them that test as well. I kind of want to talk about the ACT. Well, not yet. I'll hold off on that. We'll get to the ACT. So a couple other things regarding the transcript. We're 5 semesters in at this point. So when your student applies to college, which will be next fall, ideally the window when your student applies is going to be between when school starts and Thanksgiving break. We like to get our college apps in by that window of time. So we have essentially 1 more semester to show the colleges what your student is capable of before those applications are sent. They will see all of 9th, all of 10th, and all of 11th. What they will not see when they accept or deny or waitlist your student is what their grades are for senior year. So when they make that initial decision, they won't have their senior grades. They will know what they're scheduled to take, and they will assume that the student that they accept will maintain the grades that they're bringing in, but they won't know exactly what they are yet. So that's why this semester is so big, because it's their opportunity to prove, am I a student on the upswing? Is my trajectory going up where I'm really becoming more academic this semester and I can prove that? Or am I a student that's kind of relaxing and coasting and not taking school as seriously? So this semester is big for your students. The grade point average is just a math calculation. An A is a 4.0, the D minus is a 0.7, an F is a 0. What I've told the students is that if you even had just 3 classes and you earned 2 A's, but 1 class you earned a D, well then you're a B student. That calculates out to a 3.0. So you might want to hang your hat on those 2 A's and say, I'm an A student. That's not the way the numbers roll though. You are actually a B student. So every grade counts, and it's really important that the students are aware of that. So when we talk about senior grades, because that's another thing that is like I said, it's just around the corner. So the colleges make their decision, but it's a conditional decision. And how I tried to explain it to your students is it's sort of like they're writing a contract. They're saying, if you accept me and all that I bring to your campus, I'm going to take these classes senior year, and I will be maintaining these grades. The grades that I currently have, that's the student I will be for my senior year as well. And so these colleges will be checking first semester and second semester grades. And if everything is status quo, that's fine, no problems. But if there is a dip, or if the student decides I'm going to take IB Physics and IB English at the beginning of their senior year, and then before you know it, they've decided to drop IB Physics and they've changed their English class, well now we have a problem because they are not holding up their end of the bargain. So it's a really big deal that when they register for these classes next week, they've really thought through what they want their senior year to look like, because that's what they're going to be reporting to the colleges in the fall. So we want them to hold true to their commitment. So now what I'd like to do is just walk through the registration form with you so that you know what your student needs. Now first of all, what you're going to see is it's a 2-pager. There's a lot of classes on there. There's also a lot of classes for our 11th, our 10th, and our 9th grade, and they're not necessarily the same classes. So what I'm saying is that our school right now has a lot of courses that we're offering. Now, what generally occurs is that not every one of those classes actually runs. Sometimes we have classes that conflict out. Sometimes we don't have classes that enough students sign up for, so we can't feasibly run them. So there's reasons why we don't always run every class. So what I'm telling your students for their protection is to sign up for a full schedule of 14 classes. That way, if some of these classes happen to get canceled, they're not high and dry with less classes than they need or want to be taking senior year. In the fall, I can drop classes, I can give them open hours if it fits their schedule, but it's very difficult in the fall when classes are full to try to squeeze one more student in. That doesn't help anybody. So I'm telling your students to sign up for 14 and also sign up for 4 alternates. There's going to be an alternate section on the registration form. They should also sign up for 4 alternate electives that they'd be interested in taking. Now, and like I said, I won't hold them to that when they actually get their schedule. I just want to have some flexibility with their schedule. So let's talk about English. With English, they have some choices. Your student, thanks. And a lot of times their choices are sort of dependent on what they're currently taking in 11th grade, because a lot of these classes are 2-year commitments. So if your student is currently in the IB Lit Language and Performance SL, then what they should take next year is the IB Lit Language, or the IB Literature and Performance SL2. That's the class that they should take, and it's a full year class, so they should sign up for both semesters. If your student is currently in the IB English HL, then they would take IB HL2. If your student is in English 11, they have a couple choices. One choice is they could take 1 semester of stage literature and then pair that with a language arts elective, and the language arts electives are listed in the next category. Or they could take IB Lit Language and Performance SL1 all year long. So they do have some choices when it comes to English, but know that a full year of English is required here at the high school. Now, even if your student chooses to take a full year of IB English, be it SL or HL, we still have some really excellent language arts electives that they should consider taking as part of their course schedule for next year. Math. So As we discussed, a fourth year of math is not required, but it is recommended. So just to walk you through a little bit of that, if they are currently in geometry, advanced algebra is the next step. If your student's currently in advanced algebra, then they have a choice depending on their grade. You're going to see two pre-calculuses there, one with an asterisk behind it. What we're looking at is students who are going through advanced algebra right now with minimal difficulty, they're getting a C or higher, they would be in regular pre-calculus. But then we have some students that are legitimately struggling in advanced algebra right now. And so if you're getting between a C minus and a D minus, that pre-calculus with the asterisk behind it, that's the one that your student should take. And we're looking at first semester grades to make this decision. This particular class will move a bit slower and review some of that advanced algebra material. And as much as we want to push our kids to that next step, I want to say that if there's gaps in knowledge, it's going to show up. It's going to show up, and it might show up at the college level. We want to shore those gaps up now while they're in high school, not when they're trying to take college algebra. That's not the time. So if you think your student is struggling, depending on with the grade, with the way their grade is reflected, don't hesitate to go with that pre-calculus with the asterisk behind it. If they are in pre-calculus, well, then they have some choices, and this is where I really encourage students to meet with their math teacher. They could do AP Calc, they could do AP Stats. There's also the IB math route. So there's a variety of paths to choose. Their math teacher will know best what place they should go. And that's why we give this 1 week of lag time between when we talk to students and when they need to register. They need to do some footwork in between. They need to be talking with their teachers, finding out some information, and there's also a course book of studies that they should be reviewing because that gives them definitions and descriptions of the potential classes on this list. And I'll show you in a minute how to find that. Okay, science. So again, science is a similar situation as math. They need 3 years. We recommend 4. A lot of times what colleges want to see is that 9th grade physical science. Some of your students maybe in 9th grade took AP environmental. That's wonderful as well. They like to see biology and chemistry. And then if your student's going to go for that 4th year, physics is a good choice, or AP environmental science is a good choice. Now we have a lot of different forms of physics. We have physics, IB Physics SL, we have regular physics, and then we have 1 semester of intro to physics. The go-to person to decide which placement your student should choose is their current science teacher. And then social studies. We have a required 4th year of social studies. So this is a requirement. Couple choices here for senior year. Some students choose to take a full year of AP Psych, and that would meet your requirements. Some students choose to take 1 semester of AP Microeconomics and 1 semester of AP Macroeconomics. That would also meet the requirement. Some students choose 1 semester of Econ, and they pair that with 1 semester of Geography. Or if your student is currently in IB-HL, they should then take IB History HL2. The back side is a lot of different electives. One class that maybe is currently getting a little buzz, and your students might be talking about it, is an IB Sports Exercise and Health Science class. That technically is not a science class at this point. At this point in time, that is an elective. It's a strong elective and one that will look excellent on a college application as part of their high school transcript. But where they would find that is under the academy electives in the bottom left box. If your student is taking 3 or more IB or AP classes next year, it is not necessary that they take an academy class. But if not, they should take at least 1 academy class during their senior year. And that's regardless of how many they've taken in 10th or 11th grade.
So did you say 3 classes?
3 or more AP or IB, that's right. The rest of these classes are electives. And again, we want the students to sign up for 14 with 4 alternates. Does anybody have any questions about the classes that are on here? Or what I went through regarding the requirement, what they should be planning for? AP Psychology is listed and it will run. Maybe you're thinking about, I don't know where that question came from, but maybe you're thinking about IB Psychology. IB Psychology is not on this sheet, and that's not slated to run next year. Any other questions? Yes? Well, it is going to be IB curriculum. So yes, it would be on par with the other IB classes. It's a brand new class at this point. So I couldn't really speak to how it matches up as of yet. But the person, if your student's interested in taking that class, Miss Gust is one of the masterminds behind this class. I'd recommend that your student connect with her and ask some real specific questions. The program of study guides. So when I talk about your student spending this next week doing some work so that they're prepared for registering for classes, I'm talking about having those conversations, and that's really important. That's part of them working on their self-advocacy skills, which they're certainly going to need when they walk through those doors at the college campus. So that's really important. It may be tempting for you to want to email or call those teachers to get that information. I encourage you to have your student do it. And if it means you witness them sending that email so that you can sleep and know that that communication has occurred, that's fine. But they should be the ones that initiate the conversation at this point in time. The other way they can get information is by going to our website, and they're going to find the course study guide in two different places, under the counseling website and then also under my personal website, where also this PowerPoint in its entirety will be there in case you want to watch it again. So those items will be there along with their registration form. So and every class that we're offering next year will be listed with a description. And it'll be similar to this. Like, this is an example for civics. Now, this was way back in 9th grade. Your students took civics. But civics is a 2-semester course. It's available to 9th grade and 9th grade only. And there's a description. Now here, we have a class, Painting 2. That's going to run next year. That's going to be offered. It's available for all grades. It's a 1-semester class, but there's a prerequisite. Clearly, students have to take Painting 1 before they take Painting 2, and there's a description. So it's important that right here what we have titles. Titles are totally open to interpretation. What I think small group communication is by a title and what somebody else thinks it is could be polar opposite. So they need to do a little bit of the research so they know what they're getting themselves into. Academy courses of study, as you know, this is not a new concept. We've had these academies now that we're in our 3rd year, I believe, of this. And so we keep building on what we already have. Some things to be aware of with these academies. Some students want to shy away from them. I'm not really sure why. But we have, with our academy classes, an articulated agreement with a lot of the 2-year schools in the area, Normandale, Hennepin Tech, that if your student takes one of these classes and earns an 80% or higher, and then upon graduation attends one of those campuses and takes as few as just 1 class on those campuses, they will recoup the credit that they earned while in high school. So there is a big incentive, not just the class itself, because these are really excellent classes, but the fact that it actually has some college credit tied to it too, if students choose to go for that. Health. Again, I kind of went over this already, how your students are going to have the 1.75 credits of health. Next year, they won't be pulled out of class as much. Next year, it'll only be twice during the year, 3 class periods each, and by the end of it, they will have their CPR certification. So just know that we will continue that 1 more year. PSEO. So PSEO, post-secondary enrollment opportunities. What this is where students can attend a college campus and take college classes while also meeting their high school requirements. They can do this on a full or a part-time basis as long as they're accepted. A lot of our students choose to do this at either the U or at Normandale or Hennepin Tech. I even have some students who are very artistically talented, so they've gone to some art schools in the metro area. And what they are responsible for is transportation. So their role is to either deal with the bus, getting to and from and paying for that, or they have a vehicle at their disposal. What the school district covers is their tuition, their books and fees. So this is a really nice situation if your student is at a point where they want to start taking classes at a college campus. But there are some things to be aware of when it comes to PSEO. The second you start college classes, you are starting your college transcript. Now your high school transcript kind of haunts you until you get accepted into college. But once you've graduated from college, it's rare that anybody's going to want to know what your high school grade point average is when you're applying for a job. People will always, employers will always want to know what that college grade point average was. So that is something you'll never get away from. And students, if they start their college transcript when they are a senior, they just need to realize the ramifications of it. If it goes well, wonderful. But if they don't get great grades, it's not going to go away. Their transcript has been started and it will stick with them. If you think your student would like to learn more or maybe even apply for this, this is one of the slides that I put in your packet. These two dates, it is March 4th and March 11th, all day long. I'm going to be in the College and Career Center walking students through the process of applying for PSEO. Norman Dale does an excellent job with our students with PSEO. They take good care of them. They have some really nice resources in the, for tutoring and learning lab style work. And even if your student is a full-time PSEO student next year, they are still our student as well. I would still work with them and monitor their progress semester by semester. If they're an athlete, they're still free to participate in everything, school dances, all of that. So they're still one of ours, they just would be attending school at a different campus. Does anybody have any questions about PSEO? Yes?
I've got a question on just how scheduling works.
Right.
It's got to be a difficult thing.
It is.
They're going to take some college class that's only offered at a certain time, and they're here taking classes. How does that work?
You're right, that it's not an easy thing to juggle. It helps if your student is in a position where they don't need a lot of credits, because then we have some flexibility. But as you know, a college schedule, a typical college schedule, is very different than a typical high school schedule where the classes here meet every day for 50 minutes. Where there it might be a 2-hour class that meets Monday and Wednesday. So it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle trying to put that together. So sometimes when your student applies and they're accepted, it's a go, and then we can make that happen. But sometimes it's not possible because of just what you're saying, a schedule conflict, or they have to take maybe a night class there or an online class, and it becomes less desirable. But other times it works great. The other thing we have to be mindful of is their semesters begin and end differently than when ours begin and end. So not only do we need to make first semester mesh, but a lot of times we need to make our second semester mesh with their first semester. So it gets a little complicated. That's why they meet with me if they choose to be a PSEO student. We map out their schedule, but they also have an advisor at their respective colleges where they're doing PSEO so that they're getting guidance there. But they need to be flexible. They need to go with the flow. Sometimes it's easier if they're going to do PSEO that they just go full time and they take all their classes there instead of trying to make 2 schedules work. But that's a good question. Any other questions about PSEO or anything that we've covered so far? Okay. Okay, so next week, like I said, your student's going to be registering from home. This is on your small packet, this particular website. So what they're going to do, well, it's not a website, but just directions. So they log into PowerSchool. They know how to do this. Then they simply go to class registration. And what they're going to see is a bunch of different course categories. And along the side here, they're going to see these pencils. They will click one at a time, and when they do that, their course possibilities will come up, and then they will choose what it is they want to take. For example, if they're on social studies and they click that pencil by social studies, then these are some of the options that will come up. Now you probably can't see this, but I'll tell you what it says. On the top, it's AP Psych, semester 1 and 2. So if they want to take AP Psychology all year long, then they'll click these two. If they want to take Econ and Geography, they'll click the Econ and the Geography. Or if they're going to do IB History, HL, those two. Now sometimes your student might say, I can't find the class isn't here. That's because there's going to be 1, 2, 3, there's going to be all different pages on the bottom. So they might have to go through. But every category will have its own pencil, and then they can click the classes that they want to take. If they've done the research, it should take 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Is psychology required to take both semesters?
Yes, it is. If this, whatever class, and that speaks for all classes, if it's a 2-semester class, it is required that they take both semesters. That was your question as well? All right. Any other questions? So that's registering for their classes. Okay, now we're going to just move on to the college piece. The one slide that I didn't really cover with your students a whole lot because I feel like it's kind of on a need-to-know basis, but I want you to be aware of it, is that senior year shows up real different for students. Some students charge into senior year and never slow down. They are excited, they can't wait to the next step, and they're just ready to roll. They're motivated from the word go. Others are slower out of the gates, and it's kind of a hassle to get them to want to take the ACT, and it's a hassle to get them to apply to college, and all the way through. It's just kind of this power struggle. It's a power struggle. And one thing, I'm a parent, so I know when my kids aren't doing what I want them to do, my immediate reaction tends to be they're being disobedient. They're not respecting me. They're not listening to me. But what I'm going to encourage you to do over the next year is have a lens of compassion. Because one thing that your students are approaching that you may forget is they're approaching the biggest change of their entire lives. They have been living in your homes, most likely, since they were born. Maybe even they've lived in St. Louis Park since they were born. And so now we're talking about it's time to apply for college, and there's all this energy behind it. And not only that, but you're supposed to be real excited. You're supposed to be real excited about this biggest change of your life. And not only that, you're supposed to know exactly what you want to do. Well, I think there's a lot of people that are still trying to figure that out at 40. So what we're putting on these kids is a lot. And what I would just say is when you're getting that pushback, consider a lens of compassion and say, you know, it's not that you're going to let them off the hook, but it doesn't necessarily have to get angry, if that's possible. So, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point in time. They're not going to deliver on your time schedule. The other thing I'll tell you is sometimes things look real good, and then that second semester, you're like, what is the deal? They seem to be sabotaging their whole high school career. If that's going on, if you're seeing that, call in reinforcements. You don't have to fight that fight at home all the time. We have a lot of staff here that can help. Maybe there's an advisor that has a connection. There's me. We have social workers. If you're seeing that your kid's on a slide, make sure you let us know so we can help as well. Because you don't have to go it alone. But college is there, and we need to do some things. So now I'm going to get to the criteria about what your 4-year schools are going to be looking at. 5 different things: GPA and class rank, ACT or SAT, letters of rec, resume, and admission essays. All of these are key, and one's really not a bigger deal than the rest. They're all critical pieces to the pie. So we have the ACT, we have the SAT. A lot of people want to know, which one should I take? What's the difference? And there are subtle differences, and there's a lot of similarities. So they're both approximately 3.5 to 4 hours on a Saturday. They're generally offered about 6 or 7 times during the year. What we encourage our juniors to do is sign up for the spring test. If they haven't taken the February, that's fine because it's really geared for that spring of junior year. So April would be the appropriate test time. And you can maybe consider June as a backup test time if they don't love their score in April. It's nice to get it done in the spring because next fall we want to be applying it. It takes about 7 weeks to get those scores. So October is not ideal because first they're a little rusty from summer. They're just getting into their senior year. They have the pressure of college apps, and now we're going to throw an ACT on them. That's not the best time. The best time would be April and then June. And ideally, for your kids, we offer both of those test dates here at the high school, so it's familiar territory. Now, you do have the ACT registration form right in front of you. The reason we kind of talk ACT more than SAT is generally Midwestern kids tend to take the ACT more often than the SAT. If you lived on the East or West Coast, we'd be talking about the SAT. Almost every college in the country is going to take either one, and one is not going to outshine the other in their opinion. It's just like I said, it's regional. So we offer the ACT here in April and June. The information's right there. Your student should take the ACT plus writing. There's with writing or without writing. They might not want to take that writing component because that's one more part of the test they have to take, but most four-year schools want to see the writing, so it would be a bummer if they have to retake the test because they didn't do that component the first time around. So they should definitely do the writing. Research shows that you can practice your way to a higher ACT score. Now it might not be 5 points higher, but it could be a point or two. Worth your time. So what we have is a free ACT prep program right here at the high school on Thursdays. It is drop-in, and we like to run 3 or 4 sessions before every ACT test. So you see that second row. I highly recommend that your students stop in, get the information. They'll also be able to access this at home because it is a website that we're going to introduce them to, and there's a counselor intern there to help them for 2 hours, and then we provide busing afterwards. So that's a good service, and I would encourage your student to do that unless you have a different plan. We're going to pay for something or seek out a different avenue outside of school. Yes?
It's accessible at home in the computer?
It is. You won't see it because she will show them how to access it. She wants to show them how to use the tool before they just have it at home. So they should go at least once for the 2-hour session. So that's the ACT. The other thing, there's a strategy to the ACT. One thing, you don't want to leave any answers blank. So students need to be mindful of the time when they take the ACT, because if they get down to 5 minutes, if nothing else, they want to make sure they've got a response for every one of those bubbles, because it's a bubble test, except for the writing component. So it would penalize them if they leave them blank. At least if they answer it, they have a shot that maybe they got it right. SAT is a little different than the ACT. There's more subtests. I believe there's 10. 5 subtests for the ACT, 10 for the SAT. SAT is more English focused. There's a lot of vocabulary, a little bit more reading, grammar, writing. So if that's their forte, well, you might want to give the SAT a shot. The thing with the SAT, different strategy with test taking there, they are not penalized as severely if they leave an answer blank. So if they can narrow it down to 2 responses, they should go ahead and guess. But if they are completely in the dark about what that answer is, it would not harm them too much if they leave it blank. They're not penalized as much as they are with the ACT. Slightly different strategy there. ACT and SAT prep, just like an athletic event, you wouldn't go into a game without having gone to practice, learning the plays. Same thing here. You don't want to go into an ACT or an SAT blind, cold. You got to know what to expect. You want to know what those subtests are. You want to know what those questions are going to look like. The ACT reading component, that flies. Kids will be rattled if they haven't seen it once or twice already. So it's really important they do some type of preparation. Letters of rec. Okay, so 2 letters of rec are sufficient. That should really do it. If you start coming up with 3 or 4 or 5 letters, you know, if it can't be said in 2, maybe 3, then those aren't very good letters. So you need 2 good letters. Ideally, they're from your core teachers. So when I say core, I'm talking English, science, social studies, math. 9th grade is a bit historical. That was a full 4 years ago, you know, if you're looking at when they're going to walk through the college doors. So 9th grade I'd probably shy away from unless it's a 9th grade teacher that your student has continued to have an ongoing relationship with, and that teacher can speak to their academics present day. If not, I would go with a 10th grade teacher or an 11th grade teacher. And this is what I tell students. This is your semester. If you can't really think of 2 teachers right now to write you letters, this is your semester to be known, where in at least 2 classes you want by the end of the year to be able to go up to that teacher and say, would you please write me a letter of recommendation? And they can. They could say, I know this kid, he participated in my class, he was super involved, he was a great leader, and this is how and why. So this is their time for at least 2 classes where they make themselves known. If they want to add a 3rd because maybe they have some talent, maybe they're really athletic, maybe they're really musical, maybe there's somebody else out there that knows them outside of the academic world, that would be an excellent 3rd letter. That would be an excellent supplementary letter. So that's what I'll tell you about letters of rec. What I told the students is teachers are busy, and this is a big class. This current junior class is 350 students. So these teachers are going to be hit up for a lot of letters of recommendation. We need to be respectful and mindful of their time. So you need to give a teacher at least 3 weeks before your deadline. What doesn't bode well is if you say to a teacher on a Tuesday, I need a letter by Friday. It's hard to turn around and write a nice thing about that kid, you know, because they didn't give you much time. So you really, the more time you give that teacher, and it's okay to give them some gentle reminders via email or something. So if you give a teacher a letter 3 weeks out, you're probably going to want to follow up in a week and a half via email or just stopping by, just saying, just wondering how my letter's going, don't want to bother you, but just jog their memory. Because like I said, they're going to be asked to do a lot of letters. Then we have our resumes. So an academic resume, what that would involve is your activities in and outside of school. And that's why I tell the students, again, this is stuff we can start working on now. If your resume is thin, now is the time to start having some activities to bolster that. Colleges love community service. They like to see good citizens walking through their doors. If you don't have any community service on your schedule, and I don't mean the class, I mean outside of that, it's time to get some. And they've got a whole summer ahead of them to plan some ways that they can give back to their community, something that they're passionate about. That's one thing. If there's some clubs or activities that they have not yet tried, maybe now's the time to do it. They're juniors. They hopefully have the confidence to stretch their wings a little bit and try something new. So they want to start building that resume. And then the admission essay. This is the one thing that can be a real game changer because this is their voice loud and clear. This is first person. And parents, make sure it's their voice. Okay? This is not anything you write or even want to help too much about. College admissions see through that. You want your kid to write their essay explaining, this is who I am, this is what I care about, this is why you want me in the building. These are the things that are important to me or unique to me, and kind of avoid the cliche things. We have one of our counselors talks about, you know, the cliche, I went on a mission trip and I thought that I would change them and they changed me. And this is how. They get a lot of those. You want to be a little more unique than that. I mean, it's a great topic, but you know, it's kind of a dime a dozen these days. So try to do something a little more unique. And then these are just items that help. Summer experiences. Oh, spring break's around the corner. Well, that doesn't feel like it, but eventually it'll get here. And college visits are a great thing to do. We have a ton of schools in the Minneapolis area, in the state of Minnesota. Get on some campuses. That is something that students need to see. They need to get on those campuses and just look around. They have a lot of visit days. And you should know that Wisconsin and North and South Dakota have something called reciprocity with Minnesota. What that means is your student can go to any of public school in those states as well and pay in-state tuition. That's a great deal for a Minnesota resident. So don't shy away from those schools across the border either. It's really important that your students see that either over spring break or maybe over the summer. The more college exposure they get, the less scary it's going to be. And that's what we really want to do, is we want them to feel comfortable. The other thing, Naviance is an excellent tool. And I did put Naviance on your half sheet. Your students have logged on to Naviance. It's their Power School login information. They can do scholarship searches on that. They can look at college websites. There's a resume builder on that where they can actually put in all their information and have a really pretty resume template, several to choose from. So Naviance is a really great tool for part of the college process. And in the end, I will be here to assist all the way through senior year. All right, does anybody have any questions? Yes? They can start asking by the end of their junior year or at the beginning of their senior year. But right now is the time to make the impression, build the impression. Anybody else? Yes?
So, when you go out to college, you go, and many colleges have a little song and dance for you and a tour. Is it important to set up an interview with a counselor or something there? I'm not even sure if they offer it, but I know the typical thing is you go to the college, you may sign up for a tour at a time, and you're there with about 200 parents, students, and you walk around, and you hear an undergraduate.
Right.
But
Right.
you need to do something more to meet with a counselor, admissions counselor, is that even possible?
It really depends on the school. I mean, you're going to get some small private schools that they would gladly meet with you if they think you're a prospective student and they like your student's application or what, you know. So but it depends. But then maybe UW-Madison or the U here, they're probably going to give you an undergrad and send you in droves. And you could follow up with an admissions counselor maybe over the phone to ask some questions. But it really depends on the campus itself. You can try, I mean, they have their visit days, but then you could also try and call in and say, you know, could I set up a private thing? It never hurts to ask. But if it's a big college, big campus, you're probably not going to hear a yes. Depends on the school. Yes?
How important is it, some of these classes that the kids choose, like math, take calc or stats or IB, just choices like that, will that affect them in college? You know, how are kids supposed to have kind of an idea what they want to do or be, and can this derail them? If they choose, they don't take physics, say, in high school, and is it
Right. I would say only in the most selective scenarios would it derail you. I mean, if you're maybe applying to like Ivy League and you're going up against everybody else, and if you don't, you know, the kids who have these amazing course rigor transcripts and you've chosen AP Stats instead of AP Calc, and that particular college happens to think that AP Calc is superior, then it might ding your kid. But at this point, you know, we don't know. It's so subtle. I would say to try to play that game is a losing game. And what I would do is tell your student to go with where they're excited, what they want to learn. Because somebody's going to love them for it, and somebody's going to say yes. So I wouldn't try to be an admission counselor mind reader, because we could have 5 different admission counselors up here, and they might tell you 5 different things, depending on their school. And I don't mean that they contradict each other, it's just they have different interests. Yeah.
What about the lack of waiver grades here for higher classes? Because some of these higher schools want 4.0 plus.
Right.
And we can't, they can't.
So the reason we don't weight grades, and we have talked to admissions counselors about this, is what we've heard is that as soon as those grade points come through, they eliminate the weight anyway, and they recalculate it. So that's why we don't do it. We don't.
Books it says 400 plus.
What's that?
In some of the books it says 400 plus.
Because they want the weighted grade. Well, I guess what our philosophy is here is that the rigor shows itself on the transcript, and admissions counselors look at that closely. They know that an IB physics class is harder than a regular physics class. So they will look at the rigor. They will look at the rigor and factor in that A was harder one maybe than the other A.
Speaking of IB physics and IB bio, they can't take, they were told that they might conflict, so they can't really enroll.
Yeah, and I think it's premature to be talking about what's going to conflict out because we haven't even created the master schedule yet. So I would not be able to know what might conflict out. What I would say with the IB schedule is we're offering more IB classes to our 11th to seniors than I think I've ever seen. So chances are some of these IB classes are going to just have to overlap because there's not enough hours in the day. We have more than, I think if we don't have more than 7, we have close to 7 IB classes for our seniors. So there will be some doubled up. I don't know what it is yet, and I don't think really anybody does, to be honest. Yes?
Do you recommend any other NCP than classes?
Well, it really depends on your financial investment that you're willing to make and your time investment. I mean, you could go all the way to Kaplan and pay $2,500, or you could go to our community ed and pay, I think it's $85, $90. And that's, a long weekend. And in between, there's Club Z, there's Huntington. They're all solid, but I'd warn you about, too good to be true. There's only so much movement they're going to get. But it really depends on how much money you want to invest and how much time your student's willing to go to these classes. Prep guides, that is great if you have a kid who's disciplined enough to sit down and do it. We've got a lot of really nice prep guides that have never been opened. So if you've got a student who's going to sit down and study it and is that self-disciplined, then that's an excellent way to go. We do. Question?
Yeah, I've got a question on letters of recommendation. I've got an older daughter, and we went through a fair amount of effort to put together letters of recommendation. And then we went to apply for colleges. There wasn't any place to submit them. As far as I could tell, they were kind of a non-issue.
It depends on the school. I will tell you, I was the counselor for the class of 2012, and we submitted letters through Naviance, and it was rare that I didn't have a school that asked for a letter of recommendation. We submit them electronically now, and I think almost every four-year school that my students applied to, I did submit letters of rec. So I don't know where, some schools just look at the numbers. I used to be a counselor out in Colorado. They had a matrix, grade point average and ACT score. If you met that number, you were in. If you didn't, you were out. So, maybe it was an out-of-state school that I'm not familiar with, but most schools like to see the letter, and it doesn't hurt to have it. And if you don't know where to send it, I can help you. We'd send it to admissions with the rest of their application. Any other questions? Well, thanks for being here. I'm really glad you took the time. I appreciate it. Don't be a stranger. My contact information is on there. If you have any questions, you could call or email me. Thanks.